Drivability can be defined as the satisfactory performance of an engine under all conditions. Warm and cold starts, acceleration, cruising, and idling. In the interest of maintaining good drivability, Chrysler has accelerated its move to electronic fuel injection in 1984. Individual drivability test procedure books are available for the single-point EFI and multi-point turbo EFI 2.2-liter engines. The EFI drivability books have been expanded to cover more categories. Although the books appear to be larger than previous drivability books, most problems are usually found in the first few steps. There's a new hard start, start and stall, excessive idle speed section. And to help you use the system's onboard diagnostic mode more effectively, the limp-in mode test and drivability test fault code sections have been added. But before you open the hood on an EFI-equipped car, it's imperative that you read the Drivability Test Procedure Introduction. It starts with a review of system operation. You should already be familiar with the basic operation of EFI and turbo EFI systems from previous Master Tech sessions. But a quick refresher won't hurt. Next is a listing of onboard diagnostic fault codes and a description of what each means. Remember that the fault code list is for reference only. The introduction goes on to describe the recommended service sequence, required tools, important precautions, and other useful information. Read it. When a customer comes in with a drivability complaint, it's important to get a detailed description of the problem. Is the car hard to start? Does it stall? Is the idle speed excessive? Does the power loss lamp come on when the engine is running? Does the problem occur with the engine cold or warm? These and other questions can help determine when the problem occurs and under what circumstances. When necessary, you should verify the complaint with a road test. You need this information to know what test category to use in the Drivability Test Procedure Book. For example, don't confuse a no start with a hard start. Even if the car is towed in, try cranking the starter. And don't overlook the obvious. Check the fuel gauge reading. Remember that the battery must be fully charged for all tests. If equipped with the original equipment Mopar battery, a green dot is visible in the viewing port when there is a full charge. If the customer complains of the power loss or power-limited lamp lighting whenever the engine is running, use the limp-in mode section of the Drivability book, regardless of other symptoms. The Drivability Test Cold section is used for cold drivability problems other than hard starting, stalling, or excessive idle speed. Because you must duplicate the conditions under which the problem occurred, the engine must be completely cold. The best way is to leave the vehicle outside overnight. The engine must not have been started for 7 hours. Likewise, the Drivability Test Warm section is used to diagnose problems occurring with the engine at operating temperature. To check that the engine is thoroughly warmed, feel the upper radiator hose. At 195 degrees Fahrenheit, it will be too hot to grasp for more than an instant. Never move on to the Drivability Test Fault Code section without first completing all applicable cold or warm tests. Before starting any category tests, take a few minutes to make a visual check of electrical and hose connections. The Drivability test procedure books have detailed lists of items to check. Use the lists as your guide. Visual checks are most important. Get down in there and poke around for loose, crimped, disconnected, or otherwise faulty electrical leads and vacuum hoses. For example, a disconnected speed sensor lead could cause die-outs on deceleration. In some cases, a terminal may look like it is connected, but is not making contact internally. Because the coolant sensor connector is disconnected as part of the ignition timing procedure, check for loose or damaged terminals. Sometimes the connectors can be restored by pinching the terminals shut slightly with needle nose pliers. Also, pay close attention to the routing of wires and hoses. A pinched or crimped map sensor hose could lead to incorrect manifold vacuum readings, causing any number of drivability problems. Always route a pinched hose to avoid the interference. In addition to the underhood checks, there are items to visually inspect inside the car. Check the electrical connectors at the logic module, automatic shutdown relay, and map sensor. Some of these are hard to see. So remove the glove box assembly to inspect the ASD relay and map sensor. Make sure the map sensor hose is not pinched shut, especially where it goes through the dash panel grommet. Because any vacuum leak can upset map sensor accuracy, also check vacuum-operated heater and AC controls. A steady hiss with the engine running is an indication that a leak exists. After verifying the complaint and performing visual checks, always start the test procedures by going to the first page of the applicable category. For example, in the No Start section, you must first perform basic tests for spark, fuel supply, and injector performance before hooking up the readout box. In this case, a simple secondary ignition test for spark can avoid time-consuming circuit checks. A no spark condition might indicate a faulty distributor cap or rotor. When you are instructed to hook up the diagnostic readout box, the diagnostic sequence will depend on the results of one or all of the following checks: fault code number, any display change, and the actuator test mode or ATM test. You don't have to perform all tests in a section all of the time. If, for example, the action required in Step 1A tells you to proceed to Step 1I, don't perform Steps B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Not only will you waste time, but the test results will also be meaningless. Occasionally, you'll see reminders to tell you that the ignition switch must be on or a certain wire disconnected, and so on. Otherwise, reconnect all wires and hoses and turn off the ignition between tests, but not between steps within a test. The bulk of the tests involve jumping between two or more terminals to check for voltage or continuity. The procedure gives the locations of the connectors, wire color coding, and in some cases, specific cavity numbers. Usually, you can't find the specified wire cavity by counting from one side. So, look carefully at the illustration in the Drivability book. Always probe logic module connectors from the wire side, not the terminal side. Probing female logic module connectors from the terminal side will damage them. Sometimes, such as when testing between the power and logic modules, you'll need long test leads to reach. About 10 feet should do. Be extra careful to avoid grounding, shorting, or energizing logic module terminals. logic module damage and additional fault codes will occur. Use the wiring diagram at the back of the Drivability test procedure book to trace circuits. And remember, never check voltage unless specifically instructed to do so. You'll be wasting valuable time. When you are instructed to hook up the Chrysler diagnostic readout box as part of a diagnostic procedure, initiate a digital display by turning the ignition on and off again, and back on within 5 seconds. And write down all fault codes. Often, the diagnostic procedure instructs you to shut off the ignition and disconnect and reconnect the battery quick disconnect. This is to clear the logic module's memory. By the way, this operation will generate a fault code number 12, battery circuit interrupted, which you can disregard. Other times you'll be instructed to start the engine, turn on a specific electrical switch, then turn off the ignition and initiate another fault code display. This forces the logic module to search for intermittent problems. If the fault code no longer exists, you should recheck for loose or corroded electrical connections. In some instances, such as a no start, the Drivability test procedure books instruct you to perform an actuator test. The September '83 Master Tech session demonstrated the actuator test on single-point EFI systems. But because you can't see fuel flow from the injectors on multi-point EFI systems, the procedure is different. As with single-point EFI, disconnect the coil high-tension lead from the distributor and place it no more than 1/4 inch from a good ground. With the ignition already cycled to initiate a display, press the actuator test button. Watch for 3 sparks from the coil lead to ground, and listen for 2 movements of the AIS motor on the throttle body. Next, install a jumper wire between pin number 2 and number 3 of the gray distributor sync connector, and press the ATM button again. If the injector drivers are switching properly, you'll hear a click from one pair of injectors when the connector is jumped, and another click from the other pair of injectors when the wire is removed. Don't worry if you see a code 42. It means that the ASD relay was temporarily bypassed when the ATM button was depressed. The readout box is capable of performing other diagnostic tests, including a distributor reference pickup test, switch test, O2 system test, and detonation sensor test. See this month's reference book for details. During this training session, you have learned how to use the EFI and Turbo EFI Drivability test procedure books, how to verify drivability complaints, make a visual inspection of system wires and hoses, and how to perform some key diagnostic procedures. Let's take a positive approach to diagnosing EFI drivability problems. By using proper diagnostic procedures, you'll see that there is no mystery in finding the problems.
I've talked to you about several important things in the past, and today I'd like to talk to you about what I consider another very important subject. You can call it road ready, new car prep, get ready, what have you. It all means the same thing. Deliver an excellent vehicle to your customer. Your position of being the last contact between the corporation and the customer is considered a vital and most important link. Your close inspection of the vehicle before the customer receives it can be the key factor in having a good, lasting impression of your individual dealership, your own reputation as a competent technician, and the quality of the Chrysler Corporation product. It's most difficult to impress you enough on just how important it is that you inspect each vehicle as if it were the one that you were going to receive yourself. In other words, put yourself in the position of the customer and ask yourself, honestly, would you be satisfied if you were to receive your vehicle in this condition? Now, for an example, whether or not all the doors, the deck lid, the hood, they all open and close properly. Nothing can be more frustrating than receiving a brand new vehicle and having to slam the door 3 or 4 times to close it. All functional systems should be checked for proper operation, including a thorough road test. There should be no portion of the road ready procedure left out, especially the road test portion. We here at Chrysler all feel that in the past few years, our quality control has improved immensely. Now, we're not there, we know we're not there, but there is a total commitment by our corporation that we're going to get better. Now, that doesn't mean that some difficulties aren't going to arise in your new car prep. The most important point of my whole conversation with you today is, as I stated earlier, you are the most important link. Don't let a customer have a vehicle that is not 100% right. Fix a problem condition before the customer takes delivery of his new vehicle. That's what road ready is all about. Remember this old cliche, and it always proves true. The customer's first impression of the vehicle is generally the lasting one. Thank you very much for the time you've taken to listen to me. Now let's get into the road ready procedure. I think you'll like what we have for you.
Of the things we do as representatives of Chrysler Corporation, few are more important or have more impact than new vehicle preparation. When a customer takes possession of a new Chrysler product, the condition and performance of the vehicle directly reflect on you as a competent, conscientious technician, on the dealership where you work, and on Chrysler Corporation as a whole. The average customer spends a large percentage of his income on a new car and has a right to expect it to perform properly. First impressions can be lasting. A well-prepared vehicle can help ensure the customer's satisfaction. A poorly prepared one can send him elsewhere for his next car. There are several other reasons for careful new vehicle preparation. Safety, for example. You must assure your customers that their new vehicles meet all federal safety standards. They expect it. They also expect their vehicles to meet federal emission standards so that they are individually contributing to cleaner air and helping to control pollution. Competition is also an important reason. A dealer's service is a key to repeat business, and new vehicle preparation is often the customer's first exposure to the service department. Remember, good service is a decisive factor in determining which cars sell. When you turn over a vehicle that is mechanically sound, you have projected an image of quality for yourself, your dealership, and your corporation. This is the new vehicle preparation manual, and it's designed to ensure the correct preparation of all Chrysler Corporation vehicles for customer delivery. The manual covers all items on the new vehicle preparation inspection and road test form, and includes such features as bold numbers identifying each inspection point, each point in boldface type for quick identification, procedures listed in a logical order which prevent duplication and wasted effort, and tips to help you do a better job. All operations labeled "Adjust as required" are included in the Road Ready allowance and are not reimbursable to the delivering dealer during the 3-month adjustment period. Dealers are responsible for protecting new vehicles from damage and deterioration prior to retail delivery. Vehicles prepared, then stored for extended periods, should be re-inspected for storage-related problems. As soon as a new car arrives at the dealership, a receiving inspection should be conducted. This often overlooked procedure is necessary to determine if there's any transportation damage or shortage of equipment, and should be done for your own protection. The vehicle exterior should be inspected for chipped or cracked windshield, broken windows, and loose or missing moldings. Dents, scrapes, scratches, chips, or other damage to the body exterior. Damaged or missing side view mirrors. Missing wheel nuts. Chafing, bruises, cuts, or scrapes on tire sidewalls or tread. Broken or missing lenses, or missing gas cap. You should also look for missing under hood items like the radiator cap, carburetor air cleaner, wing nuts, and similar small items. Check in the trunk for items shipped loose, the license plate bracket, spare tire, jack, tire wrench, the radio antenna, as well as floor mats and wheel covers when equipped. On the inside of the vehicle, check for cuts and abrasions on the trim. You should check the rear view mirror, the cigar lighter, the radio, the accessory control knobs, the keys, and any special equipment listed on the shipper. You should also be sure the owner's manual and consumer information brochures are with the vehicle. Remember that the material we are covering in this videotape is illustrated in greater detail in your new vehicle preparation manual. Let's move along to the underhood inspection. First, check the operation of the hood latch and safety catch. Pull on the release cable or move the outside release lever to allow the hood to snap open. The safety catch should prevent the hood from going to full open position. Make any adjustments required. Next, check the engine oil level. It should be between the add oil and full marks. If necessary, add oil, but make certain it meets the specified requirements. If the oil level is low, inspect for leaks. On vehicles equipped with automatic transmissions, park the vehicle on level ground with the engine running at normal operating temperatures to check the transmission fluid. Remove the dipstick and check the temperature of the fluid. If the vehicle has been driven 15 miles or more, the fluid should be too hot to hold comfortably between the fingertips. Check your manual for the appropriate levels for each temperature. If the fluid reading is low, add according to the instructions in the manual. Check the brake master cylinder fluid level by first wiping the master cylinder cover to remove any dirt particles. Make sure the fluid level reaches the bottom of the split rings in the filler holes of the reservoir. If necessary, add fluid. To check the power steering fluid, remove the cap and check the dipstick. The proper level is indicated on the stick. If the fluid is low, fill to the mark. Start the engine and turn the steering wheel from stop to stop to expel any air from the system. Stop the engine, remove the cap, and recheck the fluid level. Next, check the fluid levels in the windshield and rear window washer reservoirs. If low, add fluid at a concentration appropriate for the current weather conditions. When checking the radiator coolant level, the engine should be idling at normal operating temperature. In weather, the coolant in the reserve tank may appear low. Do not add coolant until a normal engine operating temperature is reached. The coolant level in the plastic reserve tank must be between the minimum and maximum marks. If coolant is added, use a 50-50 concentration of Mopar antifreeze coolant and water, or equivalent. Use a higher concentration, up to 65%, if a lower freeze point is required. Do not add coolant to the system unless it's necessary. After adding coolant, recheck the antifreeze protection level. Remember, do not remove the radiator cap while the cooling system is under pressure. Now, check all brake, fuel, and power steering lines and connections to make sure they are not twisted or kinked. Check all the connections for leaks and tighten loose connections as required. Check routing and connections of all underhood wiring and reroute and tighten as required. Make sure the starter, alternator, and ignition wires are correctly installed, routed, and in the clips where provided. Be sure all spark plug wires are firmly attached to the spark plugs, distributor cap, and coil. Inspect the routing and connection of all vacuum and coolant hoses. Finally, check the battery test indicator and the battery terminals for tightness. Do not wipe the lubricant from the battery posts. Let's move on to the body inspection by first checking the door alignment. All doors must have the proper spacing at top and bottom, front and rear, in and out. If adjustment is necessary, start at the rear quarter panels and work your way forward to the front of the vehicle. After the door has been properly aligned, check the release mechanism and ease of operation, both inside and outside the vehicle. Partially close the door to check the open door detent. Now, close the door to check the latch and striker. Open the door again and depress the lock plunger. Then close the door to check the lock mechanism. Unlock each door with a key to check lock operation. Repeat the process for the deck lid, tailgate, and liftgate. Next, run all door, quarter, vent, and tailgate windows to the fully closed position to check ease of operation. Inspect all glass for proper sealing. Check the operation of both front seat mechanical slides and power adjusters. Make sure that seat back recliners operate properly. Also, do not forget to check the latches on the back seats for proper operation. Inspect all seat belts and harnesses to assure they connect and hold properly. Make sure the shoulder harnesses allow movement. Inspect the condition of the belt and anchors and see that the seat belts retract properly. Assure that the head restraints are properly installed and secure. Make certain the height adjustment operates easily, and remove the plastic protective covers where appropriate. Install all items which are shipped loose, like the wheel covers, the cigar lighters, the radio antenna mast, luggage racks, license bracket, and floor mats. Finally, touch up minor paint chips and scratches. Next, let's inspect under the vehicle. Beginning with the ball joint stud nuts, check that the stud nuts are tightened. If the nuts are not tight, tighten them to specifications. Then, inspect the lower control arms for loose attachments and torque where required. Check that the tie rods and the steering linkage are not bent. Inspect the steering linkage lock nuts. If the nuts are not tight, or a cotter pin is missing or not properly installed, tighten the nuts to specifications and install a new cotter pin. Check that each component of a rack and pinion steering assembly is tightened. Inspect the bellows-type oil seals on front-wheel drive axle CV joints for damage and proper retention. Make sure the front wheel bearing, front drive axle, and rear spindle cotter pins are properly installed. Replace the dust cap. Make certain all fluid lines are routed away from sharp edges and moving components. Inspect all fluid lines and connections for leaks, and if one is found, tighten the connection. Use a special tube wrench for tightening all brake fluid lines. Check all hose connections for leaks and tighten as required. Route all hoses away from sharp edges and moving components. The exhaust system must be checked for alignment and leaks. If any exhaust system component is not clear of the vehicle underbody, loosen the attaching bolts or nuts, shift the component to ensure proper clearance, and tighten the bolts or nuts. If the vehicle is equipped with a manual transaxle, manual transmission, or transfer case, remove the fill plug and check the fluid level. If necessary, add the proper fluid to the correct level. Make sure the proper tires are mounted on the vehicle and that each is properly inflated, including the spare, according to the recommended pressure chart on the driver's doorpost. Install valve stem extensions where necessary. In order to properly bead seat the tires, tire pressure may be above normal. Be sure to reduce to specifications. On rear-wheel drive vehicles, certain procedures covered in this section may differ. Refer to the Road Ready manual for more specific details. When the vehicle has been fully inspected, it's time for the crucial road test. If the vehicle is equipped with a manual transmission, assure the clutch pedal has free play. Check the operation of the clutch in all driving ranges. Adjust as necessary. Next, see that all gauges, instrument indicator lights, and instrument panel lights are functioning properly. Check that the horn, turn indicators, and headlights are operating properly. Operate the windshield wipers and washers and adjust as necessary. Fully check the air conditioning, heater, and defroster systems for proper operation. At this point, it's important that you refer to the Road Ready manual for the proper test sequence of the air conditioning and heater control modes. Next, check the operation of the radio.
Editor and
Turn
publisher
the
of
unit
Ring
on
magazine, too.
and manually dial a local radio station. Operate the volume, tone, and balance controls. Set each push button. If the radio is so equipped, operate the AM/FM switch. If equipped with a built-in clock, set to the correct hour and minute. Carefully check the service brake and parking brake operation. Check the brake pedal travel and feel. Put the vehicle in gear and apply the brakes while the car is in motion. Brake operation should be smooth and positive. Now, check the steering for noise and ease of operation. If the vehicle is equipped with power steering and is difficult or noisy, check the fluid reservoir. If the reservoir is full, the vehicle needs further service. If the vehicle has manual steering, check for excessive play or looseness. Inspect the steering wheel center. Locate and correct squeaks, rattles, and unusual vibrations. Tighten obviously loose fasteners. Where appropriate, remove protective seat cushion, carpet covers, and door covers. On vehicles equipped with automatic transmissions, be sure the engine starts in both park and neutral. Verify that the engine doesn't start in any drive position. Next, locate an incline or steep grade and stop the vehicle. Put the transmission in park and slowly release the service brake. If park lock does not hold the car, the transmission requires further service. Now, apply the service brake and place the transmission in neutral. Then, set the parking brake. Slowly release the service brake to see if the parking brake will hold. If not, it needs adjustment. See that the parking brake warning light comes on when the parking brake is applied. Inspect the transmission shift indicator to be sure it lines up properly. With that completed, check the engine and transmission to make sure they are operating in all performance ranges. Verify that part engine throttle and full throttle kickdown are operating correctly. During engine performance evaluation, if the idle quality of the vehicle is felt to be objectionable, check and reset idle speed. If the vehicle has a speed control, be sure the brake release switch is functioning. If the vehicle has four-wheel drive, shift the transfer case through all ranges to make sure shifting is smooth and all gear positions respond properly. Finally, here are some tips for ensuring the proper appearance of the vehicle as you deliver it to your customer. It should be washed. The tire sidewalls should be cleaned. All protective covers should be removed. Clean any undercoat overspray, excessive window sealer, and excess weather strip adhesive. Clean interior trim, seats, carpeting, and moldings as necessary. And remove shipping and inspection stickers. Remember that all the information we've covered in this videotape is covered in more detail in your new vehicle preparation manual. Refer to it when you have questions. When you've properly completed all the preparation procedures, you can be confident that you have a road-ready vehicle for customer delivery. And you can be sure that you've made an important contribution toward another satisfied customer. The customer satisfaction recall detailed in this program involves a condition in which coolant temperature sensors may fail in the cold mode on certain 1984 passenger car models. Some of the vehicles affected by this recall were manufactured at the Jefferson Assembly Plant and include models manufactured from job number 1 through MDH 11, 10, 17, and the remainder from St. Louis Plant number 1 with an MDH from job number 1 through 11, 12, 00. Affected vehicles are equipped with electronic fuel-injected or turbocharged 2.2-liter engines and include 1984 Dodge 600 and Daytona models, as well as 1984 Chrysler E-Class, New Yorker, Laser, and LeBaron passenger cars. In these vehicles, coolant temperature sensors may fail in the cold mode due to a supplier quality problem. Failure during vehicle operation will result in activation of the power limited or power loss diagnostic signal light, but should not significantly affect engine performance. However, after the ignition switch has been turned to the off position, a warm engine may not restart. To correct this potential problem, the coolant temperature sensor and mating connector on each involved vehicle must be replaced. Replacement coolant temperature sensor and connector packages, recall part number C3940-125, are being mailed free of charge to all involved dealers before owners are notified of the recall. The parts supplied have been revised for improved durability. In addition, a quick disconnect is provided in one lead of the new connector. This is to be used when setting engine timing or idle speed, instead of disconnecting at the sensor. In order to perform the replacement of the coolant temperature sensor, first partially drain coolant from the radiator to a point below the thermostat housing level. Save the coolant for reuse. Next, detach the wiring connector from the coolant temperature sensor by grasping the connector body and pulling it off as straight as possible. Avoid pulling on the wires and excessive wiggling of the wiring and connector. Now, remove the coolant temperature sensor from the engine using a 13/16" wrench. Before installing the replacement sensor, apply an even coat of sealant to the threads. Use Mopar Perfect Seal sealing compound, part number 4-41, or 3419-115, or equivalent. Now, install the new sensor and torque to 25 foot-pounds. To prevent damage to the sensor, do not use impact tools for this installation procedure. After completing the sensor installation procedure, the drained engine coolant can be replaced. In order to replace the coolant temperature sensor wiring connector, the battery must first be disconnected. After disconnecting the battery, peel back tape on the harness to expose approximately 8 inches of the coolant temperature sensor wiring. Now, cut off the existing sensor connector and wiring, allowing sufficient lead extending from the harness for ease of splicing to the replacement connector. Splice the replacement connector wires to the two corresponding cut harness wires by first removing 1 inch of insulation from the lead ends. Now, attach the replacement connector to the harness wires by twisting the leads together. It's important that each splice must now be soldered to guard against future separation of the splice and possible electrical shorting. Use rosin core solder, not acid core solder, for this procedure. After the solder is cooled, wrap each spliced wire with a minimum of 3 layers of suitable electrical tape. Next, tape the new wiring into the harness. Fold and tape back excess wiring while leaving the inline quick disconnect exposed. Allow an adequate length of the inline quick disconnect wire for ease of disconnect operation. Now, route the wiring along its original path and attach the connector to the new coolant temperature sensor. Finally, reconnect the battery to complete the procedure. For additional information regarding this program, refer to the dealer and zone notification recall letters of January 1984.